California leaders think they are solving energy poverty. This is Ronald Stein. Ronald is author, columnist, engineer, Pulitzer Prize nominated book, Clean Energy Exploitations. He can show the cover of the book just now. And he's founder of PTS, a company in the United States. Welcome to the podcast, Ronald Stein. It's a pleasure.
Armando, glad to be aboard.
You mentioned in your article, the last article I saw, that there is energy poverty. How you define energy poverty?
Well, here in California, we have, as you probably know, the highest homeless rate. The homeless population is growing. That's the one population is growing. The regular population is decreasing because people are leaving the state, but the homeless population is growing. And energy poverty is the fact that most people are in poverty now. Most people are living paycheck to paycheck, and even people making $150,000 a year with a family of four, they can't save any money. They're just living paycheck to paycheck. And we have the highest cost of electricity, highest cost of fuel, and that affects everything. It affects the price of bananas, the price of sandwiches, and everything just goes up and up and up. And we are in tough shape. And, when you look at the rest of the world, 80% of the 8 billion people on this earth are living on less than $10 a day. People in California making big income, homes are selling for $1 million, and it's just a different world, and we can't afford energy prices to go up. And all the California energy policies are basically driving the cost of electricity further up, cost of fuel further up. And it's like I say, it's just the straw that breaking the camel's back. So it's a sad situation for the citizens of California.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that leaders in California, which leaders you mean besides the governor? Do they have a technical staff or who are leading this process?
Well, yeah, we have the California Energy Commission, which is the big one in California, but everybody is following Newsom. If he says we're jumping out of an airplane without a parachute, all the agencies follow in line. So they're all drinking the same Kool-Aid, and they won't participate in the conversation because they basically keep wanting to get rid of oil. They're reducing oil production. We're importing more. California is becoming a national security risk for the entire United States because we're a big state with the fourth largest economy in the world. And we used to import 5% of our fuel. Now we're importing more than 60% of our fuel. And it's basically operating our 9 international airports, our 41 military airports, and 3 of the largest shipping terminals in the United States are here on the West Coast. And it's all being basically run by foreign oil. And so, we're basically delegating it to others. We keep shutting down coal-fired power plants, and we want electricity. And where do we get it? California imports the most electricity of any other state in the country from adjoining states. Well, right now the adjoining states have the supply. We have the demand. Mm-hmm. If their demand exceeds the supply, then we're not going to get any. So
you are buyer every time.
We're the buyers. That's right.
And what are the thoughts of the governor and the policymakers? What are the set of thoughts they have?
Well, they still believe that if we go to renewable energy, and we've talked about this before, renewable energy is wind and solar. But wind and solar is only renewable electricity. It can't make anything for society. And that's the really, I guess, the driving force that's got all the policies going in that direction. They just want renewable electricity. And, if you had all that renewable electricity, there'll be nothing to electrify because everything that needs electricity, iPhones, iPads, television sets, washing machines, is made from oil products. So they haven't got a substitute for oil. And, crude oil is the basis of our materialistic society. I'm 100% in favor of getting rid of oil if there's a backup plan. And right now,
Yes.
there isn't, and wind and solar is not a backup plan. And the fact that wind and solar only provides occasional electricity, depending on the weather, it's basically a redundant electrical generating system that needs a backup. Because, computers, data centers, airports, military, they need continuous, uninterruptible electricity. So having occasional electricity, the military has to operate more than just during sunshine. And the hospitals, same thing. And so it's like I say, it's redundant, power supply. And again, all the power supplies, Armando, we have 6 ways to generate electricity. You got coal, natural gas, hydro, nuclear, wind, and solar. All 6 methods of generating electricity are made of components: computers, wiring, insulation, et cetera, which is all made from oil products. So the desire to get rid of oil, you get rid of electricity. There'd be no way to make electricity if you don't have oil. And, the same thing with vehicles, planes, trains, it's all made with oil. It all started with a light bulb. The light bulb was made with oil. And people don't understand that. And that's probably the basis that, electricity came after we discovered oil. It's not that oil is doing it, because as we talked about before, oil is useless. Black tar, unless you can, take it to a refinery and heat it and beat it and crack it and all the good things they do there and come up with these derivatives that now makes the products in our daily lives that didn't exist a couple hundred years ago.
It's very similar to Germany. Germany is following this green thought.
Exactly.
Why? What's the reason for that?
Well, Germany was the first country to go green, and today they got the most expensive electricity in the world. And California is following that plan.
But what's the reason?
The misunderstanding about the word energy.
Both, but are they friends or?
No, they're definitely not friends. But they believe in the concept. And again, it's just a misuse of the word energy. There's 2 things we really have to talk about, is electricity and products. 2 different arenas, because electricity can be generated 6 different ways. Products right now is the only way we have way to produce products is oil. Yeah, I was interviewed on a New York TV station a couple weeks ago, and they asked me, "Hey, Ron, we understand you're pro-oil." I said, wait a minute. I'm not pro-oil. I'm pro the products we get from oil.
Sure.
And that's the thing that's made society, grow from 1 billion to 8 billion in less than 200 years with those products.
Yeah. Look at in the screen, Wallace Rosa saying that Mill says that we are civilization made by oil. Exactly what you mentioned.
Exactly. Yeah. It's actually not oil, but it's the products from oil.
Right.
And if there's a way to clone it, replace it, hey, I'm all in favor of it.
Yeah.
But we've had 200 years to replace oil and been unable to do it. And, that's where society is. We're, like I say, we're a materialistic society. And, today we forget that, 200 years ago, there were no hospitals.
Yeah.
There were no militaries, no airports.
Yeah, no, of course not. Yeah.
And, all the gadgets we have in the house, washing machines and dryers and heaters and air conditioners.
Everything
that
we use at home.
didn't exist.
That's right. He is complementing something. Every day we eat oil and gas.
Well, that's
We
true,
have to
because,
make fertilizers.
right, we're able to, with fertilizers and pesticides, we're able to use less land to grow more food. And yeah, today we're able to feed, 8 billion people. Because if you get rid of crude oil, you're getting rid of all the ways that generate electricity, get rid of vehicles, trains, et cetera, et cetera. But you also get rid of the pesticides and the fertilizers which allows us to feed this 8 billion people. And today, we got, 50,000 merchant ships and 20,000 commercial jets moving these products all over the world to keep these people alive. Because once you get rid of oil, 20,000 commercial airlines are grounded. Air Force One gets grounded. That's a good news.
But Ronald, I'm totally sure that you are having dinners with Governor Newsom about this
I'm
issue and
trying. I'm
discussing it.
trying. I've invited him. He won't accept.
Do, is impossible to have this kind of meeting? Does he receive someone to talk about this or no? Who
No,
are the people he talks with?
I'm not sure. Maybe he talks to himself. But the press even they don't even ask the questions. If I got a chance to talk to Governor Newsom or President Joe Biden, hey, I'm all in favor of getting rid of oil, but do you really want to close all the hospitals? Do you really want to, get rid of all the militaries? The militaries we have today didn't exist 200 years ago. And like I say, it's just a different world, and there's no conversation. He just wants to get rid of oil to reduce emissions. Well, ironically, that's a fun thing too, because California, there's like 39 million people live in California, which is half of 1% of the entire world's population live in California. And we're going to solve the world's emission problem.
Yeah, but the fourth country in the world in terms of GDP.
Yeah, and
Very big.
like I say, we basically are reducing in-state emissions, but all the manufacturing being done in different countries that have no environmental controls.
Yes.
So the emissions are greater there. And then we use ships and planes to bring the products back to California, which is more emissions. It doesn't make any sense. But
And the atmosphere is the same.
I would think so.
And there is no barriers to atmosphere. Yeah, exactly.
But that's the sad part about it, because, like I said, California is so obsessed with the concept that just electricity from wind and solar is going to replace fossil fuels. As we talked about before, fossil fuels does something totally different than wind and solar, especially oil. Yeah, coal is used to generate electricity. Natural gas is used to generate electricity.
Sure.
Oil is never used to generate electricity.
Yeah, not for that.
And like I say, you want to get rid of oil? Well, like I say, where's the replacement? Because it's, like I say, we're living in La La Land. It's easy to forget, 200 years ago.
Yeah.
We're celebrating the invasion of Normandy, and some of the pictures back then, and that was only in the 40s, which was, less than 100 years ago. And that was archaic compared to today.
Yeah.
And if you go back from 1940 to the 1800s, yeah, you're back in the horse and buggy days. And, people didn't live past 40 years of age and very seldom traveled 100 miles from where they were born. That was a different world. And wind and solar is not going to drive the economy. It can't, because it doesn't make any products.
You mentioned in your article that mandatory emissions to achieve a net zero is a fool's game.
Exactly.
Please tell us more about that.
Well, because if you go to net zero, I say we had a net zero society before the 1800s. There were no refineries. There was, no airports, no hospitals, no washing machines. There was nothing needed by society that was made from oil. So there was no emissions from oil, but that was a tough life. And it's a fool's game, because you want to produce wind and solar electricity, but wind and solar is made from oil. And right now, most of the products are not made in the United States, are made somewhere else. So the emissions to make those is somewhere else, not under control of California. And yeah, it's a fool's game. Like I say, we're living in la la land. It's nice and clean here, but the rest of the world is actually experiencing increased emissions. And China knows this. I mean, they're building, I think, 180. No, I think it's 80 new refineries, building like 180 coal-fired power plants.
Almost one United States quantity of refineries. You have 120
About
or
120, I think, that are left.
80. Wow.
Yeah, and so brand new, and they'll be state of the art, and they'll be large, and so yeah, they'll be a major player as the wealthy countries pursue this net zero concept, and it's even the United Nations. I mean, they're following Germany, they're following the United States, because there's 150 countries in the United Nations. I mean, there's about 193 members of the United Nations, and only about 40 of them are in the developed category, which leaves 150 still being developed, and which represents a majority of the people living on less than $10 a day. And they're basically gung-ho, net zero emissions. And the one thing the United Nations is not answering, they're not participating in conversation, is how do they expect the developed world to cope without the products supporting the supply chains right now, and expect the less developed countries to improve? Unless we get these products to the developing countries, they're not going to improve their living lifestyle and their longevity. So it's crazy. And then when you talk about electricity, wind and solar only generates electricity depending on favorable weather conditions. But again, the United Nations, how do you expect the modern world to cope if the power supply is irregular, especially when renewables are only at the mercy of the weather? And again, that's just for electricity. But if they're successful in, clamping down on the oil industry because of the emissions from refineries, you're not going to have any products. And if you have no products, you won't be able to even build wind turbines. Because wind turbines and solar panels are made with oil. So, yeah, if we go to net zero and successfully eliminate the, quote, oil industry, which is the main desire, and live off electricity, if we do that, Armando, we're looking at a loss of billions of the 8 billion on this planet. There'll be billions dying from starvation, malnutrition, weather-related fatalities. It's a sad situation. And, the people in the wealthy countries, well, like, California is a high-income state. Most of the people here are living paycheck to paycheck. They can't afford to save anything. And if they lose a job, they're one paycheck away from joining the homeless population.
And you mentioned that Latinos are half of the Californians living in poverty. Is it correct?
Well, they're part of the, I would say, the lower economic chain. And, a lot of the immigrants are in that low economic chain. So, yeah, there's a lot of people that, you need an education to get a high-paying job. And even if you have a high-paying job, you can't afford to live here.
But do they have access to energy, affordable, accessible, or not?
No. They pay the same price for electricity as I do.
Oh, yeah.
And
That's right.
Yeah, and so, the places they go to shop and to buy food and burgers and tacos, whatever, those stores are paying the same price for electricity.
So you mentioned that Latinos are half of California living in poverty, and white people are 10% of these people.
Well, California the climate here is fantastic. We're very temperate. It never gets cold, never gets hot. We don't allow snow in California, except in the mountains. And, we don't allow humidity because, most places are pretty dry. And so we are a an ideal place to live, but because a lot of people want to live here, it's a very expensive place to live. And if you're at the lower end of the economic chain, it is really, really challenging.
A median class family, how much do they need to live normally with car and things like that?
Well, I'm not sure about, but I do know that most people have like a $60,000 to $100,000 in debt from school loans, car loans, et cetera, et cetera. And most people have credit cards, a good number of them max out the credit cards, can't pay them off. And yeah, it's an economic disaster.
Yeah.
And we're basically treating our people as guinea pigs because we want them to go to clean electricity. And again, I'm using the word electricity, not clean energy, because they still need the products,
Of course,
to survive in life. But this clean electricity is driving the population in California into financial tragedy.
Right.
99.5% of the world's population does not live here.
Right. Yeah, it's a very small count.
And so if we had zero emissions, it wouldn't do anything to the other 99.5% of the world.
I'm saying. Wallace is asking you, Ronald, what do you think about incentivizing the industry in California to innovate in the production of cement, steel, carbon capture, and so on?
Well, to do any production here, manufacturing here in California, tough, really tough. You want to get a permit? Good luck. So,
why? Bureaucratic?
It's very bureaucratic. It's very expensive, and it's going to cost a lot of money to build it. And once you build it, then you got to get a return on investment. And economically, it's just very, very challenging to build something and sell a product and be able to make a profit. It has to be a business investment. Not like wind turbines and solar panels are subsidized, because private business wouldn't build wind turbines and solar panels because economically they just don't work. But when the government subsidizes a big chunk of the cost, the government's paying for wind turbines and solar panels.
Oh, that's a reason. Yeah, but when the government subsidizes something, is capturing money from the population. So
Duh. That's right. Yeah, they're building wind turbines and solar panels with my money,
Clear. Your money. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's right. But Texas is different, no? Texas, it seems that Texas is doing an amazing job in innovation. And is it correct? Is it right?
Yes. Yeah. California is off the wall. Texas is more realistic. And I think most of the other states are more realistic. But yeah, like we're just treating our population as sacrificial lambs. And the goal is to reduce oil production, reduce refining capacity.
You mentioned that price of energy in California is different from other prices in the country, in the US. How can we compare? Do you have some numbers or some?
Well, electricity. I'm not sure of the difference. I know we're about, I think, one of the highest in the country. I'm not sure what the percentage is. And fuel, the interesting thing about fuel is the price at the pump. When you go to the gas station, the posted price of the pump is a dumping ground. All the energy policies and restrictions, the cost of that is just dumped into the cost of the fuel at the pump. We've got a high-speed rail that's being funded by fuel. Part of that cost is in the posted price of the pump and all the taxes and everything. So yeah, it doesn't cost much to, make gasoline and to sell it. But when you add in all those environmental costs and miscellaneous things are just dumping onto it, yeah, we're paying for it. And now the confusing part, the shocking part, is the fact that the governor wants to get people go electric. Well, electric vehicles are heavier. The Tesla weighs, has a 1,000-pound battery. An 18-wheeler has a 16,000-pound battery. And they're tearing up the roads at a faster rate, paying nothing to
Zero.
maintain the roads. And they're using up the roads, paying nothing to maintain them. So now the state's facing a decreasing fund to maintain the roads.
Oh,
Currently, we're a big state. There's like 400,000 miles of roadway in the state. And fuel taxes annually have contributed like $8.8 billion used to maintain the roads. Well, those 400,000 miles of roadway are now being torn up quicker because of heavier vehicles, and the 8.8 is decreasing. And so the question is, where are we going to get the money to maintain the roads? And so there's two ways. One is they're going to increase the cost of fuel, basically a dumping ground, increase the cost at the pump, and let the gasoline users pay for the EVs tearing up the road, or will increase the cost of electricity. In the UK, I think they came up with a great solution. In the UK, they have a grid problem. And so EVs, charging stations in the UK are designed, programmed to not operate, I think it's 9 hours a day.
yeah.
Like between
That's
8 and 5, they
It's
don't
market.
operate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, they're programmed not to operate during peak load requirements. So you can charge your car, off peak. And secondly, all the charges are on a separate meter.
Oh, interesting.
So if you
So
need
they
to
can
raise,
control price and so on.
right, if you need, it's basically user pays. If you're going to basically use the roads, the electricity you're using for your car you're paying a rate. And if they need more money, that'll be the dumping ground for electrical rates going up. So electrical rates, who knows? They may be as expensive as the cost of fuel to maintain the roads. But you got to get something to replenish the money that the state is losing by not selling gasoline.
And coal and nuclear are still being closed.
Oh, yes. We closed the San Onofre power plant, several years ago, and we got one nuclear plant left. It was destined for closure, but because we had some outages last year, the governor gave it a life extension. But it's still destined to close. And in the last 2 decades, we've retired 11 coal-fired power plants that provided continuous electricity. And so we're right on the brink, and it's all geared toward this zero emission concept, and it's a fool's game, and we're paying dearly for it. And one question California refuses to address is to keep wanting to solve the homeless problem. But Armando, what they really have to do is project what's the potential growth of the homeless problem. Because right now we have 180,000 that are homeless. And once you're homeless, I'm not sure how you get back on the income stream to get off of that bandwagon. And so I think we have a lot more candidates sitting on the sideline ready to join the homeless population.
Really?
Because people, they don't have any financial backup, any savings. And if they lose their job, which is, their one income stream, where are they going to go? It takes, weeks, months to find another job. And when you do, you've accumulated another week or month of debt on your credit card. And you've seen, the credit cards, when you see your monthly statement, the minimum payment is ridiculous. It barely covers the cost of the interest.
The employment rate is high in California, but it depends on technical competence to fill up this jobs.
Yeah, I think there's a good number of people that are working, but like I say, they're working just to barely survive. They can barely pay the rent. And I know when we bought our first house in the San Fernando Valley, this was in the 70s, and we paid at that time a whopping $29,000 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. I looked at it last night. You know what the price is today? $1 million for the same house.
What's the reason? The quantity of people looking for this place?
It's just constant inflation.
But people are
And
leaving California. People are going
there,
to
yes,
Texas,
yeah,
another place.
right. But when you buy, like if you buy $1 million house, to get a decent interest rate, you got to put like 20% down. Well, 20% is $200,000 on $1 million house. And people, they can't afford to pay their credit cards. They're not going to get $200,000 down. So they have to live in an apartment. If they can't afford the apartment, they potentially become part of the homeless team.
Wow, a big problem. Really?
Yeah, it's a lot of financial pressures to live in California. Like I say, it's a great place to live, but it's an expensive place to live.
Ronald, do you have your book at your hand? So could you please show?
And once I'm gonna disappear. Excuse me.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
this is the clean
this
energy
is the last
exploitation.
one.
Yes, because when Todd Roy and I wrote this book, we wanted to bring transparency that all the exotic minerals and metals to go green, to make batteries, to make wind turbines and solar panels, they're coming from developing countries that have no environmental controls, no labor controls, and we're basically exploiting people that have yellow, brown, and black skin to mine for the lithium and the cobalts and the manganese, to make the batteries and wind turbines, solar panels. And the environmental degradation is atrocious because they have no environmental laws. And it's, like I say, it's the type of thing that, and I've mentioned this before, that, I've taken a personal position. I won't buy an EV. And I won't buy an EV for ethical and moral reasons. Because I know where the lithium and cobalt is coming from, and I'm not willing to financially support that. On the other hand, our government is. They're providing financial incentives, tax breaks, to buy your EV, to build wind turbines and build solar panels. They're basically telling China and Africa, continue exploiting your people. We're encouraging it. Continue the environmental degradation on your land. We're going green. I think it's unethical, immoral, and hypocritical. But can't argue with the government.
Yeah, yeah. You know what's my conclusion?
What's your conclusion?
That you should accept the invitation from Governor Newsom to have dinner with him and discuss these issues.
He won't extend an invitation to me. But I would love to talk to him about it.
Yeah.
And that's the most frustrating thing I have seen. I mean, I'm a columnist for America Out Loud News. My articles go out, every Monday. And my biggest frustration is the lack of conversations.
Conversation, clear conversation. Yeah.
Yes. Just like when I was interviewed in New York, they say, hey, you're pro-oil. I said, no, I'm pro-products. But, Newsom and Biden, they want to get rid of oil,
Yeah.
but they've got nothing to replace the supply chain of our materialistic society's demands. Yes, we want to get rid of oil, but I still want to buy my new iPhone next year. And a new Apple, phone, Apple Watch.
You told to me that you are on a trip next week or next month to a conversation as a.
Yes, the state of New Mexico has a state organization, which is basically the oil industry, and I'll be the keynote speaker. And as I mentioned, I don't like to give presentations as much as do a fireside chat. And, a lot of people are intimidated to ask an intelligent question about energy. So I provide the moderator, I provide the entire audience with 50 open-ended questions, because I want to talk about what you want to talk about. You want to talk about EVs, wind, solar, nuclear, planes, trains, whatever. And so they start the conversation with a question, and And my answer starts a conversation. Because
Discussion.
when I'm done with this fireside chat on energy literacy, I want to feel comfortable that people are encouraged and stimulated to have discussions at the dinner table
Yeah, that at home, yes,
with
exactly.
teachers, with students, and their family members, and let's discuss it. You know, like I say, I'm 100% in favor of getting rid of oil, but Armando, we
You
have no
need the
backup
replacement.
plan, and there's no silver bullet answers to solve everything. You know, is the climate changing? Probably. It has been for 4 billion years. Probably going to continue to change. You know, we got a lot of oil here. I understand there's a lot of oil on other planets. Well, how did that happen? You know, and like I say, it's just a lot of resources that are on this planet. You know, we got oil and coal and natural gas and lithium and cobalt, and we're extracting it out of the earth. It's not
Yeah.
being replenished.
And how long do you expect to have a backup for oil? It takes
There,
100 years
there's
or less than that.
there's different calculations. I think from the known reserve, they're saying hundreds of years. You know, like fracking discovered more oil. But yeah, we'll probably discover more, and obviously it's going to get more expensive to get. You know, there's a lot of oil in the bottom of the ocean, a couple miles down. I don't know what that's going to cost to get, but no, there's a lot of resources left on this planet. But when you take a look, the planet's been around 4 billion years. And we've really only been around, you know, maybe 500 to 1,000 years. In the last 200 years is when we've been using a lot of resources.
Yeah,
So
but
if we're around another 500, another 1,000 years,
uh-huh. Yeah,
what happens after that?
yeah, but do you believe that the end of oil era will be because the end of oil reserves, or because we have a replacement, a substitute for oil?
I think it's because when we run out of oil, because like I say, we've had 200 years. We got a lot of intelligent people on this planet, and to come up with other ways to make all the products that, you know, hospitals have, airports have, you know, the space program. It's amazing, and so we've got a lot of intelligent people, but not able to clone it. So I think we got to focus on, you know, continue improving our efficiencies and conservation. You know,
Carbon capture.
just because we have it, we don't want to throw it away. Because, like I say, the world's been around for, you know, 4 billion years, and you know, if we have another 200, 500,000 years of oil left, well, that's a small piece of 4 billion.
Yeah.
And once we, you know, sucked out the last amount of oil and dug up the last amount of lithium and cobalt, you know, there's so many resources, and the well's going to run dry eventually.
That's great. Ronald Stein, thank you so much. This
Armando,
fantastic
it's
conversation.
been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure for me to have a great day, great end weekend.
Fantastic. Same to you.
Thank you.